This weekend, Formula One heads to Mexico City for the 20th round of the season. While it looked like the McLarens might be running away with the title this year, Max Verstappen and Red Bull have mounted a charge over the last 5 races to position themselves as growing favourites for the driver's title. It was in Mexico last season that Lando Norris' title challenge against Verstappen found its sharp edge, and this season shouldn't be any different. From now on, every position is vital, every point could be critical, and if there is one driver who we know will deliver when everything is on the line, it is Max Verstappen. The McLaren drivers have everything stacked against them, but can they get the jump on Verstappen in Mexico City? Well, let's check it out. The Drivers' Championship as it stands is led by Oscar Piastri on 346 points. 14 behind him is Lando Norris, and 40 behind the leader is Max Verstappen. George Russell is mathematically still in the title race, but with almost 100 points to make up on Piastri, he isn't really a contender. As far as title battles go, this is as close as it has come during the ground effect era. Verstappen has won every title during this era of F1 rules, but it was his battle with Lewis Hamilton in 2021 that really showed what he was capable of. The 7-time world champion has given a warning to the McLaren drivers, telling them not to underestimate Verstappen as the season comes to a close. In that scenario, it's challenging. The pressure is high. It is a time when you have to put your blinkers up and block everything from the outside. You have to be cutthroat, and that is what Max is. He's going to take this from them if they don't do the same. You have to dig deep to hold off someone like Max and the car he's in. But also, for either of them to come out ahead, consistency is key, and you've seen that from Max in the last few races. The 7-time champion said that Verstappen had the easiest job as a driver coming from behind, despite being 104 points adrift of Piastri after the Dutch Grand Prix at the end of August. You have 3 incredibly talented drivers, and I can't predict how they're going to behave, added Hamilton. Max has won it 4 times, so he knows what it's like, and being the hunter is much easier than being the defender. When you're in the lead and someone is chopping away at your lead, that plays on you more than if you're chasing and you have nothing to lose. In the lead, you have everything to lose. Hamilton's advice to shut out all the outside noise is fantastic, but the problem McLaren have is that they are inviting far more scrutiny onto their own team than the drivers want. Zach Brown must have looked at Christian Horner and Toto Wolff stirring each other's pots in 2021 and decided that he could do it too. Sadly, he misread the instructions and instead has been stirring his own team's pot. The team's racing rules, referred to as papaya rules, have worked really well for much of the season, but now they're under pressure from Verstappen and the battle between the 2 drivers is heating up. The papaya rules are becoming a constant joke and a source of pressure that the drivers could really do without. To make it even worse, McLaren are playing about again this weekend with their racing rules at the worst possible moment. Norris had been facing undefined repercussions after colliding with Piastri while taking 3rd place from him at the first sequence of corners in Singapore. Following the crash between the two at the start of the sprint of the US Grand Prix last weekend, these have now been removed. There is a degree of responsibility from my side in the sprint, and we are starting this weekend with a clean slate for both of us, just going out and going racing, said Piastri. While Piastri was at fault for being spun by Hülkenberg in the US sprint race, blaming him for the collision with Norris would be incredibly harsh. In the same way that punishing Norris for touching Piastri in Singapore was also incredibly harsh. While everyone understands McLaren's decision to be harsh on any contact between their drivers, the public manner in which they've dealt with all of these situations is causing them so many problems. The media pressure they're putting on their drivers is a massive problem, and both Oscar and Lando should be very annoyed at the team's handling of the situation. Of course, papaya rules can't be completely blamed for the collapse of the McLaren drivers' lead. Red Bull's return to power has been incredible this season, and Red Bull think they are in the middle of making history. But before I talk about that, if you're enjoying the video and don't want to miss anything as this season counts down to its incredible conclusion, then make sure to press the like button and subscribe to F1 Reverse. Thanks a lot. Oscar Piastri admitted he thought the championship fight would be between the two McLaren drivers after he pulled over 100 points clear of Max Verstappen earlier this year. His win in Zandvoort at round 15 gave him a 104-point lead over Verstappen, but since then it has quite quickly eroded. Verstappen has cut 64 points out of his deficit to Piastri over the last 4 rounds. The McLaren driver admitted the run of form that he's been on since Monza has been a bit of a surprise. There were flashes of that kind of performance at certain points earlier in the season, but there were also some pretty big dips. So for him to now be consistent, that has been a bit of a surprise. Red Bull have brought upgrades to their car at a faster rate than McLaren over recent rounds, which Piastri believes has had an effect. We know they've still been throwing a lot of things at their car, trying to improve it, so in some ways it's not a huge surprise, he said. But I think for everyone he's probably come into the fight quicker than I expected. Piastri can complain about Red Bull throwing parts at the car all at once, but it has clearly been effective. McLaren made the decision to not bring upgrades. They made the decision to switch their development to 2026's car. If you ask Laurent Mekies when Verstappen beats him to the title, McLaren will only have themselves to blame. The Red Bull team principal say seeing Max Verstappen going in search of a 5th consecutive Drivers' Championship is like watching history in the making. If Verstappen does manage to come back and take this title, it will be F1 history. The conversation about whether this will be F1's greatest ever comeback is already happening. Watching Verstappen over the last 5 races has been like watching the inevitable happen, like watching a boulder rolling down a hill. You just get the feeling there's no stopping him. I think watching Max driving is watching history in the making, Laurent Mekies said. He surprises us every time he goes on track, with how much he's pushing us between one season and another, how much sensitivity he has in stuff that sometimes we can see and sometimes we cannot see. While Laurent may feel like his driver is on his way to make history, he's well aware that McLaren will still be a challenge. While the Papaya team may not have the advantage they had earlier in the season, they're hardly slow, and if the track suits them, the McLaren drivers could gain the edge they need to close out the championship. I think it's fair to say that in terms of relative performance, McLaren don't have the advantage they had in the first part of the season anymore compared to us. Even back in Spa, when we won the sprint, we were still a fair half a second slower than them every lap. Even in Zandvoort, after the shutdown, we were still probably half a second slower than them every lap. So I think that has now gone, and we're in a situation where you go to a race weekend and you have 3 or 4 teams that can fight for the win if they extract everything they can, and their car can produce on that track. I don't think anyone is in a dominant position. I think every of the remaining races will be about which one of these 4 teams is nailing the track layout, the conditions, the temperatures, the tyres, and then that guy will win the race. While McLaren have decided not to upgrade their car after the summer break, Ferrari and Mercedes have followed Red Bull's lead and brought new parts in recent races. Now, all 4 teams are in a position to be fighting for race wins. The title battle might be between the McLaren drivers and Verstappen, but George Russell, Lewis Hamilton, and Charles Leclerc could all have their parts to play. What are you expecting to see happen on track in Mexico? Will we see a repeat of the implosion that Verstappen had last season? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.